Welcome. Thanks for joining us. I'm Meghan O'Rourke. I'm here at CCTV, and I am so pleased to be joined by Michael Kane, who has started a project called American Civics Snapshots. Welcome, Michael. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Michael, tell us a little bit just who you are, how you got involved in this, and tell us who you are.
So I started my career as a social studies teacher, teaching government and history in Ohio. I did that for a number of years, and those jobs kind of dried up after the Great Recession. And so I took a job with the federal government working for U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Service, moved out here to Vermont with my wife and family, and spent almost 13 years with USCIS. In their training department as a supervisor in a number of different roles. And when that started to be a bit chaotic and a bit too far from the mission for my liking, I took a resignation buyout deal and started American Civics Snapshots because we have for 50 years underfunded civics education in our schools. And while we're trying to fix that now for schools, there's not really an effort to help the adults who graduated under those conditions for the past 50 years to kind of remediate their civics knowledge. And so I saw an opportunity there, and so I've started this nonprofit project.
One of the things that you talked about was in your USCIS work, the mission that you tell us a little bit about what was in that mission that you felt aligned with and motivated by.
So I enjoyed being able to tell people that we were the agency that made new citizens. We weren't ICE, we weren't CBP, and so when people asked what I did and I said I worked for immigration, their mind instantly went to those two agencies. Not too many people know about Citizenship and Immigration Service, where we're the ones that actually did the naturalization ceremonies. We're the ones that would work on visa applications. When I was a supervisor with USCIS, my team worked on the U visa program, which was specifically for victims of crime. And so it was great to be able to say that we were contributing to the United States by helping victims of crime to work with law enforcement in order to help those victims catch those perpetrators, to get them on the path towards citizenship, and to be able to make new citizens in this nation of immigrants. So it was really great to work for them for 13 years.
Yeah, and I mean, you said it there, like we're a nation of immigrants. Why is citizenship, why is that important to the United States?
So immigration specifically is important to the United States just because it brings in fresh ideas. It revitalizes our nation in order to prevent us from being stagnant. And so we're bringing in people with different experiences, people with different ideas, people with different innovations. And so all of that kind of contributes to what America has always been. You know, we started off as 13 colonies and made that commitment early on to say it's not going to just be immigrants from our home countries. We are going to accept people from all over. We are going to accept people of all religions in order to bring them in and really build this nation as a nation of welcoming. We didn't have that. Europe doesn't have that. If you're a French citizen, 90% of them are from France and were born in France and have been in France for generations. But when we come over to the Americas, it was really an opportunity to build something, as we used to say in the 1970s and 1980s, we were a melting pot. And being that kind of melting pot made us stronger. So it was really great to work for that agency and to read these people's stories to kind of help strengthen America in that way.
And is there any, I've been to those naturalization ceremonies, it's very moving. People have to, you know, really, they renounce their citizenship from their former home country. They pledge allegiance to the United States. They have gone through a process of civics education. Are there stories that stand out to you in your mind without, you know, giving away people's identities, but like, is there a story that stands out from your mind of doing that work?
Actually, the times that I worked with the naturalization ceremonies was when I was actually a U.S. National Park Ranger, because I worked for a national monument, and every 4th of July we would have the immigration naturalization ceremonies at our monument. And so just to see those people who were preparing for the ceremony to come through and learn about our history and really appreciate the story of that monument and how that related to their journey was always really great to see. You know, we had stories of people who had come from all sorts of different areas, all sorts of different conditions, and came for all sorts of different reasons. Mm-hmm. And so those, the story of America, which we tell at the national parks, really meant something unique to each of them. And so it was great to see how that all blended together.
Yeah. And part of the process of becoming American citizens, of course, is civics.
Yes.
Sort of training, and you have to, you know, you're going to go in and take a test.
Yes.
And have to answer a number of questions. Is it 50 or something? There's a number of questions that you're going to have to answer. I don't know if I could answer those questions.
So the citizenship test that had been for a number of years, people who were preparing for naturalization, they were given 100 questions to study, and then there would be a random selection from those questions. I think it used to be 10 questions that they used to have to answer, and you had to get 6 or 7 of them correct in order to pass. When I was a teacher, and we would have time at the end of class or things like that, I would pull out those questions, and I would ask my students if they could pass that test. I would give them 10 questions and say, can you get 7 of these correct? You were born here, you know, you're still in school, you have the opportunity to learn these things. And very few students over my teaching career were able to actually get to that passing score that we require of people for naturalization. And it's because we don't teach basic civics in school, or we haven't for a really long time. And in this information age, it's really a challenge to get folks into that critical thinking mode when it comes to civics, but the basic civics questions on the immigration exam that I would give to students are really very basic. It's, you know, what is the Declaration of Independence? What did it do? What is the Constitution? What does it do? Why did we fight the Civil War? And so really at that basic knowledge, we haven't done a great job in schools of teaching those basics. And so then when we get to policy discussions, like a lot of the policy discussions that we're having now, we're not speaking the same language because we don't understand those basics. So it's been something that I've really wanted to focus on with this project.
Yeah. So American Civics Snapshot, quick, give us a definition of the term civics.
So civics is kind of a group term of the things that make up the systems which govern your lives and where they came from. So if we were to break down civics, at its most basic, it would be history, government, and economics. And those 3 things make up what we call our civics infrastructure, where we have government systems, where we have economic systems, and the roots of those come from our history.
And you're, so tell us, in 2024, 2025, you start the American Civics Snapshot.
So I started American Civics Snapshots after resigning from the federal government, and I originally had envisioned starting it as my own nonprofit project, but I had never run a business before, I had never run a nonprofit before, and so it was kind of overwhelming to get this new project started of doing something that no one else is doing, that had never been done before. And so I was overwhelmed, and I was learning about how to make a nonprofit work, and I was able to find Tiny Seed, which has become our fiscal sponsor. I am a project of Tiny Seed, where they take care of all my administrative work. They have their 501c3 status, so people can make tax-deductible donations to American Civic Snapshots. And it's really been great to work with them, because then I can focus on the education projects, the getting the message out there. So working with Tiny Seed has been great.
Yeah, and so if folks want to, they can go to CIV, amcivsnap.org, and look at sort of this project, and you'll see that little Tiny Seed. Tiny Seed is an incubator project.
Yes.
You're located in Vermont, but you are reaching, your audience is, who's your audience?
Our goal is nationwide.
Okay.
What we want to do, and our pilot project for right now, is to print 6x9 cards that are distributed through agencies and organizations all over the country. Where each one of those cards has one civics lesson on it. And so if you're going to a performance at a performing arts center and they have those cards available, it's something for you to take and to take a look at. If people are engaging with hunger centers or food shelves across the country, we want them to be able to get one of those cards to take home so that they can learn something about how their government works. So our goal for 2026, which is the 250th anniversary of the signing of the Declaration of Independence, we want to have one of those cards each month through the end of the year.
So let's take a look at January's card, shall we? March's
Yes.
card, thank you.
Yes.
One throughout the year, starting in March.
Starting in March,
10,
yes.
Okay, so let's look at March's card, and this is the 3 branches of government, and walk us through this card.
Well, so there's lots of studies that have been done over the years about how much civics people know. And one of the major questions is, do people know the 3 branches of government? And what we find is that 30% of American adults cannot name the 3 branches of government, and 13% of American adults can't name any branch. So we wanted to start with this very basics card of the 3 branches of government. We have the president, the courts, and Congress. So we wanted to tell people not only what those branches do, carrying out the laws, writing the laws, interpreting the laws, but also how those branches are selected, how they are elected. We have a surge in elections every presidential election, but then in those off-year elections, fewer people vote. And so what we're trying to do with explaining with these cards is why there are different terms, how often they are elected, how much they can be elected for, how many years they can be elected for, in order to start that conversation over the 3 branches.
And this is side 1, so these
Yes.
are the 3 branches of government.
Yes.
And where your vote relates. And here we go into, why should I care? What does this matter?
Right. So teaching adults, one of the things that I learned as a training officer with USCIS is that adults learn differently than kids do. Adults want to know, what do I need to know in order to get through my job, in order to get through my life, and why is that important for me? And so each of our cards talks about, why should you care about this? And so what we do is we talk about how each of these branches relates to each other. And then at the top there, we talk about how a split government, where the different branches are controlled by different parties, is going to be slower to get things done, where they're not going to be able to take decisive action. And yet a unified government where all the branches are run by the same party makes government work faster. Now, for some people, they would say, I like how things are right now, so I want to slow things down and vote for those different branches to be run by different parties, or we need change right now, and so I'm going to vote for a single party for all the different branches that I can. And so that's kind of the important part of why we vote in all these different elections, and kind of the strategies of how forming a government really can serve what the people want who are voting.
So let's pause, let's remain on this, and I want to get into the question, or we could come back to that slide, but I want to get into the question of, people are talking now about that the current Trump presidency, we are seeing the potentials for fascism. Bernie's on his Fight the Oligarchy tour. There are people that are accusing Bernie of being a socialist, and the Democrats of being socialists. And these are terms that are being thrown around that relate to those 3 branches of government in some way. So tie the bring the relationship, bring us back into focus around civics, and why we need to be thinking about this in light of the current sort of political conversations.
So the current political conversations are really determined by your information bubble. It's the algorithm that determines the things that you are going to see when you are out there seeking information. And so when people talk about, well, this group is fascist, or this group is socialist, or this person is a socialist, a lot of times they don't really understand what that term means. And so by bringing these basic civics lessons into their lives, trying to break through that algorithm and say, this is a card that I'm going to hand you while you're doing something else, or this is information ad, a PSA that I'm going to show you while you're doing something else, really helps us to speak that language. So one of the reasons why I started this was back in, I believe it was May of 2024, when Bernie was getting started with his Fight Oligarchy tour, he was drawing big crowds. And it was a lot of people who probably agreed that oligarchy is something that we should fight against.
Define it. What's oligarchy?
So oligarchy is government that is controlled by a small group of people, usually who have a large amount of economic or political power. And so that your government is really determined by that small group of people. There's different forms of oligarchy, whether it's based on wealth or whether it's based on knowledge or political power or even military power. All of those things can be an oligarchy. And right now, a lot of people are saying that we're seeing a lot of this wealth-based oligarchy where people are using their wealth to determine the discussions that we're having and how the government is functioning.
And if we bring that picture back up of those three branches of government, and then we go to the other side, why it should matter. In this case, if that wealth is concentrated around the president,
Yep.
talk us through how the president, if the power is vested in the president, and Congress or the courts aren't checking that power, can you talk a little bit about that?
So we see the voters there at the middle of all of this, and yet they only have direct say over two of those branches of government.
Yep.
And so in one of the challenges in an oligarchy is to make an accurate decision over who is going to run for Congress, who is going to be elected to Congress, and be able to write those laws that the president will then enforce. And the president is able to enforce those laws with some latitude given to that office by Congress, how they write the laws, and by the courts, how they're interpreting the laws. And so if we have a lot of this concentration of wealth and that wealth is able to influence the elections, that influence really does affect how those three branches operate. And so a lot of it's being seen now in terms of campaign finance and information. We see what happened with the Washington Post yesterday, where they're laying off a lot of reporters. And so if Bernie is correct about oligarchy, then we're seeing that through the media manipulation. We're seeing that through electoral
And who owns the
manipulation.
Washington Post?
Jeff Bezos,
Yeah,
who started with Amazon
Yeah.
and canceled the Washington Post books section, which is kind of ironic.
Yeah. And if you're closing down a newspaper, which is considered the fourth branch of, right?
So in some terms, the bureaucracy is the fourth branch.
Yeah.
In some, the fourth estate is the media. And so one of the quotes that I love from John F. Kennedy is that the ignorance of any voter in democracy threatens the security of all. And so we're looking at this kind of lack of information that isn't filtered through these different media outlets. And so when you are going to go vote for Congress, when you are going to go vote for the president, and the media that you are receiving is telling you some things, and other people's media is telling them something else, it really becomes difficult to get a government that works for anybody other than those folks at the top that could control it. And so that's why Bernie is talking about oligarchy being actually the form of government that we're either in or headed towards.
Yeah. Why is this important to you? One of the things that you talked about is that even though folks can't define oligarchy, people feel
Yes.
the effects of that system. Talk a little bit about that. What does that look like in your mind?
So when Bernie was on his Fighting Oligarchy tour, he was talking about how this concentration of wealth is really influencing the population and therefore the government. And there was another senator, Elise Slotkin of Michigan, who said people don't understand what the term oligarchy means. And Bernie responded that people know what oligarchy is because they feel it every day. I think they're both correct. I think that there's a lot of people who don't know what oligarchy is, and I think they are feeling the effects of that, but they can't name it. And so if we can't name something, if we can't speak the same language, then it becomes very difficult to move beyond that initial debate of what it is, what it isn't, and actually get into the policy ramifications, or how do we change this, or is this something that's healthy for us? So we never get past that initial discussion because we're accusing each other of being fascist, being socialist, being a vulture capitalist, being an oligarch. And so we never get to those policy discussions where we can actually get to affect change through the government systems that we have.
And if people are feeling it, they're feeling it because their hospital's closing down, they're feeling it because they can't afford the eggs.
Right.
They're feeling it because they don't understand why, they just don't like their neighbor, because their neighbor has the wrong sign on their lawn.
Right, and so we see that the middle class for the past 20 years has struggled to make any headway. We see that wages for 90% of Americans is flat. And so when we talk about things as basic that we feel every day, such as affordability, we have to be able to talk about the root causes of that. Mm-hmm. And if I'm saying, well, it's the oligarchs that are causing that, and somebody else is saying, well, no, it's the socialists causing that, mm-hmm. we actually have to understand what those terms mean, so that way we can move beyond that accusation and actually get to some progress on the issue.
Yeah. So back to American Civics Snapshots.
Yes.
This is where these 10 lessons that you're going to release in 2026, and then I imagine you have some other bigger strategic visions beyond that. Talk a little bit about what you're trying to do and how you're going to be reaching people. You've talked about breaking through the algorithm. Are you going to have a social media presence? So
we have a small social media presence, and those cards that we're going to be distributing, we're right now seeking sponsors for those cards to get those out into all these different areas. I'd love to be able to spread those all across the country. The card designs that we have, I've worked with Michelle Emmons of Emmy Designs. She's done a great job of really kind of helping me to focus that message in and focus that lesson in. But our long-term goal, and the reason why I originally started this, was in my mind to bring back Schoolhouse Rock for adults. We don't have public service announcements anymore. We don't have the Do You Know campaign or the Knowing is Half the Battle, because that time on television is not profitable unless you're selling it for money-making advertisements. So the goal is really long-term to get some of these ads onto streaming television services and to get them on broadcast services, where we can take 1 minute, teach someone one lesson about something that affects their lives in terms of the realm of civics, and really get that out there. But that's our long-term goal. Right now we're focused on these cards and getting those out there. It's the 250th anniversary of the United States, and we're experiencing this time of great upheaval. We're experiencing a time where people are in their information bubbles. And the first 13 years of the United States, from 1776 until 1789, we were struggling with a lot of these discussions over how strong the federal government should be and how strong the states should be and what kind of government we should actually have. And so for the next 13 years, as we get towards that same kind of time period, I think we're experiencing a lot of those same discussions, and so I'd like to start those discussions from a place of common language and common understanding.
Great. And this is a nonpartisan effort, of course.
Correct.
Yeah. And despite talking about Bernie and the Fight Oligarchy tour, and just maybe like 3 minutes, maybe that's not enough time, but what in civics is debatable? And what is, what can we call part of the canon or fixed?
Yep. So in civics, you have the basic knowledge. You have the basic terms and the basic structures. And just being able to define those structures and being able to talk about what effect those structures have. What is debatable in civics is when you start talking about what's best. What is the better system? Is this system better than this system? Is this policy
still within
better?
our sort of constitutional 3 branches of government, or
Right.
are we breaking outside of that?
So we have a lot of discussions on the extreme ends of the spectrum that are talking about systemic changes, where this 3 branches system doesn't really work anymore for XYZ reasons. And so is there a better system out there? And those groups on the extremes are talking about maybe we need to dismantle these systems because they're not working and replace them with something else. Unless we have a common understanding of how this system is designed to work and how it is actually working, that's where we start those kinds of discussions. And then we can talk about what are the systems that could replace them. And so there are all sorts of different systems out there. We are somewhat unique in terms of our 3 branches and the strength of our presidency and the role of our legislature and the role of states. And so I think when we're going to have those debates about civics, we need to start from this nonpartisan, information-based, here's what we're actually talking about. And so when I say socialism, when I say fascism, when I say presidential system, when I say parliamentary system, people will know what we're talking about in order to get the result that we most want. And what we're finding right now is that democracy was supposed to be the system that served the people best. And yet we're seeing in our current landscape that a lot of people, and a growing number of those people, are disgruntled with how things are working. They're dissatisfied with the government that is supposed to be serving them. And so that's where you get into those partisan conversations as to, is this good? What's better? What would be best? But right now we want to start with the information, the basics, the same language.
Yeah. So again, and we barely touched, we sort of barely scratched the surface, and we didn't really get into the economic system, which is one of probably the biggest drivers.
Yep.
Besides power.
Yep, we're going to have some cards talking about the economic systems and how the free market works, supply and demand, those kinds of things, where people can have a better understanding of why their prices are going up.
Yeah, so amcivsnap.org, you can go there to learn more. And you also, besides this website and these cards, you do some speaking engagements with folks, and you're going to be speaking in Manchester. And I think we have about the Electoral College.
Yes.
Where did it go wrong? On Thursday, February 12th. This seems like a passion project for you, Michael. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Is there anything that you want to leave folks with?
I just want to say thank you to everybody who's supported me on this journey, from Michelle Emmons, who's designing our cards, to my advisory board, who's been kind of helping me along and navigate this new space, and all the support that I've gotten from friends and family. It's something that we need to do. It's something that I feel like is important, and it's something that I feel like I'm built for. So I really appreciate the opportunity to be able to do this at this time. It's the 250th anniversary, and so I want to help our country make it as good as possible.
Yeah, great. Well, thank you for joining us. Thank you all for watching. And it is the 250th anniversary of the United States. So one thing that you might do to celebrate is pick up one of these cards, or in some other way, dig a little into the civics and the history of our country. Michael Kane, Thank you for joining us. Thank you for watching cctv.org, and be well.
Thank you.